All right, game faces. C2E2, good morning. How's everyone doing today?
Gang faces? Gang faces?
Okay, welcome to a comic podcast crossover live show, the first of its kind. Don't fact check me on that. I'm sure that's the case here. But out of curiosity, how many of you listen to podcasts? How many of you are podcasts?
Yeah.
There we go. Yes. How many of you have ever attended a live podcast show? Oh, wow. Okay. There we go. All right. Well, look, you guys are in for a treat. This makes it even better. My name is Bader Milligan. I am the host of the Short Box Podcast, one of the longest running comic talk shows. I've been doing this for about 12, 13 years now. So I don't know what that says about me. My mom's not too proud about that. I think comic podcast, the cool thing about it is that it almost feels like an extra layer and experience to enjoying comic books, right? Like you get to enjoy reading it at your own pace, and then you get to press play on a podcast filled with hopefully engaging hosts that are adding something extra, that are bringing a unique experience and perspective to the medium. The really good shows tend to have, creator interviews, and, you get that insight as well. And just overall, I'm glad to be having a panel with some of the best comic podcasters in the industry. Before I introduce the panel, let's talk about what you guys are getting into, all right? We're talking timestamps. First and foremost, we're going to introduce the panel. Then we're going to talk pull list essentials. So that's essentially comic books that we feel you can't miss. Then we're going to do champions roast. So these are creators that we feel that everyone should know, that might be on the come up, that are just doing great things. And then we'll open it up for Q&A, and we've got plenty of comics and cool stuff to give away.
This is the best picture of Greg I have ever seen.
Thank you. I will be signing autographs after the panel.
You need to print some of those out. Those will go faster than our posters.
Greg sent me that as a joke to put it as his picture among all of us.
Saving it.
I was like, here it is. This is the moment.
This is how I take down First Issue Club.
You should have put like a sound effect when it came up on the screen that was just like, like the doors in, what was it? Hitchhiker's Guide. They're just like,
All right, first and foremost, I mean, you guys see it already. We got the music going.
Yeah.
All right, coming all the way from Kansas City, we got Greg Lichtteig and Andy Vargas of the First Issue.
Yeah, baby.
A podcast.
Hello.
Right.
Hello.
I want to go and thank Greg and Andy for bringing 90% of our audience. Shout out to them.
We literally bring the noise.
Oh, they came with you guys. All right, next up, let's go and give it up for Aaron Knowles and Chris Hacker of the Oblivion Bar podcast on the far left.
I like Raw You.
Yeah, we had Simon Says for ours.
Man, this is good.
Somebody went to go see Godzilla -1, I see, huh?
Anytime we actually reviewed what was it, Godzilla X Kong, and every time we heard the Godzilla theme, we were like, dun 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 dun.
Just waiting for the beat to drop. Like in the gravel pit. If you like Wu-Tang and all, you get that reference.
All right, so real quick, I don't know how in-depth you guys want to go with this introduction, but Chris and Aaron, do you guys want to talk about
So lifelike.
the podcast?
Sure. Yeah. So since it says up here, since April of 2020, Aaron and I, we basically took our friendship that we had prior and condensed it and put a little quality and organization behind it, which is hard for us. We're often going on side quests and staying off topic, but basically what we do is we kind of condensed that and made it into a show called the Oblivion Bar. Now, I don't know if many people know this or not, but the Oblivion Bar is actually, because we get questions like, what is the Oblivion Bar? It's actually a pocket dimension in the DC universe where a lot of the darker corner of that universe, your John Constantine, your Detective Chimp and such, they all kind of hang out there, and it's kind of like a safe haven. So there's no real specific reason why we chose that. I just thought it sounded cool. So there's that. But yeah, as you can see there, we talk to creators. That's one of our main pillars of the show. We also review movies. We talk about all things comics. I mean, I would say, like, Aaron, would you agree that it's mostly centered around just like comics in general? There's really
No,
not at all.
I would say like yes, we both love comics, but you and I both bring way more to the table than just comics, movies, games, anime. Like we each have I said we all, like there's more than two of us. We each have our own little like niches that we've grown up with in our own fandoms, and somehow we merge it all together cohesively to actually make a product that people, I guess, like to listen to.
Yeah. That was our biggest fear too. You mentioned a moment ago about it, like how when we first started the Oblivion Bar, our biggest fear, I wouldn't say biggest fear. I'd say one of our larger fears is that we were afraid people were just not going to listen. We were just going to be shouting into the void and no one would ever listen to us. And that was like that for a while. But for anybody here that has a podcast or has thought about creating a podcast.
If you've ever created any kind of content, if you've ever streamed on Twitch or Kick or YouTube, you know exactly what it's like to sit there for hours at a time and have a viewer count of 0
or 1
staring you. And the only person chatting is that bot that you set up.
Smart child was just hanging out in the chat.
Yeah.
But that will happen. To kind of finish the point is that like that will happen. You will be shouting to the void for quite a bit. But if you just continue to put effort into it and you continue to put yourself in and be genuine with I want content. I don't want to use that word, right? That's not
that's dirty.
Yeah, you put affection and genuine love into your content. It will find an audience of some sort.
The thing that we learned early on was that much like streaming and much like, and I'm going to use the dirty word. I almost said the D word. The dirty word is content. Much like creating content on any medium, if you start forcing content that you think everybody wants to hear and that you don't want to produce, it's going to ruin everything for you. And so you're just not going to, your heart's not going to be in it. And what Chris said and what these guys are going to probably echo is that passion and that love for what you're creating and talking about is what genuinely going to bring people to your product.
Well said. Good stuff right there. Let's give it up for Chris and Aaron of Oblivion Bar, folks. All right. Greg and Andy, really quick, if you guys want to talk about First Issue Club, but specifically, you guys have been doing it for pretty long, too. I think on your website it says almost 8 years, but I imagine that's probably going by, you guys probably have added a lot more time to that. What keeps you going for First Issue Club? What can you say about it? What do you enjoy about doing it?
The fame, really. No, it's as we've gotten older, it's been a great way to stay in touch with your friends who enjoy the same hobby as you do, which is to buy paper and then store it away in a box and never look at it again. But we started it as a group of, poor nerds who didn't know what to buy every week. And we thought there were probably more poor nerds out there who didn't know what to buy. And so we wanted to showcase the first issues of the week. And we've been having a great time ever since. We've recently added Andy within the last year and a half, and he's been a wonderful addition. And so it's just been, that's the motivator, is just to hang out and talk comics, and it just kind of refills my life energy, if you will.
Your love tank.
One of the things that I'll jump on with what those guys are saying is there comes a point when you are creating that content that you truly enjoy that you forget that the microphone is in front of you. And it just becomes a conversation with your friends. That's the sweet spot. That's how you know your conversation is good, the friends are good, and ultimately your output's going to be good.
And then along the way, we made more friends like you guys, and then people that are on our Twitters and all that. And so it's just kind of grown into this huge, amazing community that loves comic books and are like-minded folks that, you can collaborate and bond with.
Amen. Can we get a round of applause to Andy and Greg for that?
Noisy boys.
To poor nerds everywhere.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on with the main event, the meat of the show. All right, we've got two segments for this. Yeah, Chris, what's the deal with this? You went ahead and kind of.
So I actually had the original. I don't know if you guys remember these, but in the '90s,
actually Chris from the future.
yeah, I hope so.
I'd hit it.
In the '90s, they had these in libraries, and there was a couple different celebrities that had one. I originally had the Shaq one. There's Shaq sitting on like this black box reading. I don't even know, but the Webster's
War and
Dictionary.
Peace.
Yeah, War and Peace.
Manual to Shaq Fu.
But it was really poor quality, so I switched it to Harrison Ford. So yeah,
that's a good look. All right, so for Pull List Essentials, the goal of this segment here is to highlight the comic books and titles that we're reading, that we're enjoying, that we would recommend to anyone. And there's 4 particular sections, or I guess categories for this segment. It's going to be favorite ongoing series. So, favorite ongoing, as it kind of says, favorite single issue, and then favorite limited series. And then we've got an honorable mention category, which was kind of free reign. If there was something that didn't fit in one of those previous buckets, that was kind of your free bingo card. So with that being said, we were given the Oblivion Bar, Chris and Aaron, the opportunity to go first. Gents, tell us about your picks for the show.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're Tom King Shills. There we go. Shills. Actually, I really wanted to put Animal Pound in here somewhere as well, but I guess I'll start at the bottom here since they're together. So Helen of Windhorn #1 through Dark Horse is just, I think, one of the best first issues of a comic that I've read in a long time. And we actually, shameless plug, had Tom on the show to talk about it. And his pitch was essentially, if you loved Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow with him and Bilquis Evely, it's just more of that, but in, Victorian times with a fantasy twist to it. So that's incredible. Aaron, I want to kind of pass, before I get into Wonder Woman, I'm going to pass the buck to you for Zawa, because that's the book that we both loved. And again, shameless plug, we had Michael on the show, Michael Dialinas on the show, to talk about it right before issue 1 came out.
We spent about 10 minutes before recording that show practicing saying his last name. And
Dialinas.
And I'm still struggling with it. But I just, real quick before I move to Zawa, I know we gotta be quick, but Helen of Windhorn. My first foray into Tom King was Supergirl, and it was phenomenal. Apparently I'm kind of a slut for long-winded and long-written creators. I loved Stephen King. So Tom King is very much long-worded. And so even though Helen of Windhorn it's so good. The writing is so well done, and it fits the arc with, Bilquis's art so well. But Zawa's 5 issues. It's, written, created, everything by Michael, and it is phenomenally fun for just kids and adults of all ages. It has so many layers to it. It has, that environmental, kind of outlook for it. It has food. It has just, love versus nature versus nurture. It has evil versus good, corporations taking over the world. It's so inviting and welcoming as far as an avenue, gateway into the comics world, that it's very much recommendable for any age. And the art is phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean, he did everything. We only have written and illustrated, but he colored it, he lettered it, he did everything. Inked it, obviously. So, that's a great one. And like Aaron said, it is very recommendable. It's something you could put in a new reader's hand and go, hey, this is how you learn to love the medium. But also you give it to someone who's been reading comics for 10 years and go, I mean, if you've never heard of Michael Dialinas and his work with James Tynion on, The Wind, or he did The Woods as well, I think, through Boom. So he's incredible. One of our favorite creators. We're just working in comics. Along with that, Wonder Woman. Now, again, I already said that we're big Tom King fans, and I actually originally had Avengers Twilight #1, and I actually thought you guys were going to pick it, so I took it off because I know you guys love that book. So, but Wonder Woman, I actually just read issue 8 last night, and what Tom and Daniel Sampere is doing with Wonder Woman is it's hard to summarize. Wonder Woman is not a book that doesn't sell well for whatever reason. I don't really know exactly why. It does. I mean, you've had some incredible creators on it recently, and for some reason, it'll eventually venture into obscurity. Tom King and Daniel Sampere are doing something really special, and special, but also uncomplicated. Like they're boiling down Diana to her core. What makes her awesome? Why is she great? And essentially, what it is that she does the right thing when everybody else doesn't. So it has political undertones. We tried to bait Tom on the show to talk about it.
You tried to bait him.
I tried really hard to get Tom to be like, you're a liberal, say it.
He wasn't a master.
He wouldn't do it.
Him.
So we talked about January 6th during that conversation. If you want to listen to that, available wherever you listen to podcasts. So
my outlook on Wonder Woman is like this: is when you have Zawa, which is absolutely engaging and opening to just about everybody,
sort of round on the ends.
Yeah. Wonder Woman is not that, but also it is not as complicated as it looks. It looks like it has sharp edges. It looks like it's going to be too hot to touch. It might, but at the same time, you really have to dive into it purposefully to get out of it what you want to understand. Mm-hmm. And it's for me, I'm not necessarily into that depth of wanting to confront everything that's, opposing society and its greatness right now. But you can get that out of that, but you can also get that superficial enjoyment of just a superhero, Wonder Woman story, which I love.
Yeah, she does punch folks in that story, which is great for everybody.
In the face.
And then lastly, and not for any specific reason, but I really love Birds of Prey. I don't know if you've read any of this yet, but Kelly Thompson and Leonardo Romero on this book. I actually went through the entire series. That's what I read on my trip from Indianapolis to Chicago. And it's just so good. I don't really know. I think we have a couple people in the crowd who I've heard talk about how much they love Kelly Thompson and her work just in general. And more of the same. If you have not read Birds of Prey for whatever reason, this is me telling you right now, check it out. And then along with that, they're changing up the team every 6 issues, which is kind of cool. So I wasn't expecting that when I was reading it. When I found out they were doing that, I thought that was a really cool sort of notch.
I have not read it, but Big Barda is in
yeah.
that book, and I have everybody who listens to our show knows I have a muscle mommy kink. So Big Barda, like definitely, like just,
She-Hulk, Big Barda. Who else we got? Like, if they're above 6 foot and more muscular than most of the men in the room,
Like Titania.
Aaron has a weird tingle in his stomach. So,
Greg, Andy, when you look at their list, is there anything on here that jumps out to you? Have you guys covered any of these comic books on the podcast?
We have covered every one of the first issues for sure.
Just
Weird.
issue 2.
I think it's a great representation of all the great things that are out there in comic books right now. I mean, of course, Tom King, superstar writer who has the pen of gold, and then Kelly Thompson on Birds of Prey, like you guys said, is just like nailing every issue, and it almost seems impossible for her to continue the fantastic streak that she is on with books.
Oh yeah. Andy, you want to chime in here? Anything that piques your interest out of their list?
So I missed Zawa because I'm an idiot. I missed Helena Windhorn because I'm an idiot. But I will say that the representation here is great about the state of the comic book industry right now. Just how you can take any idea that you have, get it made, and it ends up being a fantastic output. That's what's exciting to me.
yeah, 100%.
Good stuff. All right. Let's give Chris and Aaron a round of applause for putting this list together. Solid list right there. All right. With that being said, let's take it to the first issue clue. Oh, I'm sorry. Wait.
Oh, sorry, I meant to mention as well. So in issue 2 of Birds of Prey, we're in that. So at one point, Diana and John Constantine travel to the Oblivion Bar. As I said earlier, it is an actual place in the DC universe. So I thought that was pretty cool. I thought I'd show it off to you guys.
I'm gonna get that panel tattooed.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Aaron on the far left, and then Chris is center right there.
Yeah,
Stock.
I'll wear fishnets. I'll do it.
Just look.
If it gets us likes and follows on the show,
I
will
thought
do it.
you were saying that I was Black Canary.
No, you're Patrick Star, buddy.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'm Patrick.
Do the face.
He's an icon. Come on. There we go. See?
It's true, I guess.
You guys could be brothers.
Very emotive.
All right. Now, for real, let's move on. First issue club, poll list, essentials. Andy, Greg, how did you guys go about putting this list together? What were some of the factors that
So with this, it was kind of books that came out of nowhere and surprised us in multiple ways. First of all, Void Rivals was kind of a backdoor reboot to Transformers and G.I. Joe that no one saw coming. But in all seriousness, the book Void Rivals is just a fantastic book about two feuding alien races trying to figure it out. And
Anybody's watched Enemy Mine?
Yes, thank you.
That Dennis Quaid movie? It's exactly that, but Robert Kirkman in comic book form.
And then with our favorite single issue with Alien Black, White, and Blood, it was kind of it was scarier than any of the Alien movies, I'll say.
Yeah.
It was, they took it to the degree that I didn't want Marvel to take it, because I like my Marvel comics to be a little more friendly, and I can read them with the lights on or off, but they told some pretty gruesome stories in that Alien book, particularly one with a child trying to get out of an alien-infested ship that made my heart race and my forehead beat up with sweat.
And that story specifically is super cool. So for anybody who doesn't know, the Black, White, and Blood series is black, white, and red, right? Those are the 3 colors they use. But aliens in the Alien series, and Happy Alien Day, by the way, 426.
Yes.
The aliens have green blood. So that specific story at the end of the issue was black and white for the first 1-2 pages, and then transitioned to green. And it was mostly green until you got to the end, and spoiler alert, the kid's okay.
Unfortunately.
Damn,
But,
darn it.
Yeah, the kid's the bad guy. That's
come at night.
They didn't fully take it there, but that's okay. So Rare Flavors, for anyone that hasn't read it yet, is written by Ram V and illustrated by Felipe Andrada. One of the most beautiful comic books that is out right now. It is it has these soft, colored penciled, and then it's some stark, more bold imagery as the story goes on. But it's like a book about a demon making a cookbook and learning about what humans taste like and which humans taste better.
Yeah, he's teaming up with this documentarian to ostensibly make a documentary about food, food across, the world. And the documentarian thinks he's collecting recipes. The demon's actually collecting the people who make that food. But the art, like Greg said, is pretty soft. It's pretty understated, but it really circumvents the intensity of the story. because it's kind of a murder mystery, kind of a documentary in its own right as a comic. But it's everything you want. It's understated, poignant. There are some really good recipes in it, which is a kind of an interesting twist in a comic.
Yeah. A great blueberry muffin recipe that just will knock your socks off.
Well, they do the tea one in the first issue, and it's like, it comes out of nowhere. You're like, why am I reading a tea recipe right now? But it works. It works somehow.
What I really love about Ron V too, just quickly, is that he refuses to explain his comics. So if you read it and you get something out of it, which is wildly different from anybody else in the room, that's probably on purpose.
It's like, if you don't get it, you don't get it.
You just don't get it.
I have no time to explain it to you.
Gatekeeps
I'm Ron V.
You know, I appreciate that he doubles down on not dumbing down his stuff for the audience, right? I think I think it was Chris, your interview with him, where he talks about being such a Chris Nolan fan and kind of embracing the confusion. And I think that's much needed in comic books, right? Like just having sometimes a nebulous kind of ethereal a story that kind of maybe you got to read it twice or three times. I think I can really appreciate what he brings to the table in terms of the story, where there's so many multi-layers, and there's a lot of readability to his comics too.
Yeah, it grows with you over time.
Well
you know,
said.
you'll read it once, and then 2 years later, you'll get something completely out of the story because of who you are at the moment.
And it never feels snobby too, right? I think that's a delicate balance, is that sometimes the more, high-end comics can come off a little snobby, a little gatekeepy, and maybe they're not so, welcoming to a new reader. But Romby, I've never gotten that like snobby factor. To it.
There's a nice balance, and as you said before, there's a nice balance because of that soft, like pencil,
Yeah.
Shading, sketching to it, because that feels very soft, but also that juxtaposition of contrasting it to the really harsh topic that it's covering.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh, and that nice fun balance that you get when you read something. It's unexpected, but at the same time, because of how soft the visuals are, that kind of like harsh plot twist that we're all kind of hoping for is presented very delicately, like a good recipe.
Ooh, wow. Got bars today. Okay.
Don't applaud that. He just stumbled upon that.
Like, you got to give Aaron his flowers when he comes, Greg. I wanted to, Greg and Andy, I want to go back to you guys real quick, because I love how varied and ranged your choices are. Mm-hmm. And as, the purveyors of, first issues and putting a spotlight on those, I wanted to hear from you two. What makes for a good first issue? Like, what are you looking for when you pick up or give a new book a chance? Like, is it readability? Is it price and the value? I mean, like, what are you guys looking for?
I think it's the same thing I look for, like when I order a meal. Like, I want a lot for a little. You know what I mean? Like,
two sides?
I want 2 sides of fries. I want a lot of story. I want it at a good price, because there's a delicate balance of just like telling a story with a nice flow without getting too bogged down with exposition. I want something that is new and exciting yet familiar. It's like it's hard to do it, but so often and every week we see creators do it so well that we that's why we kind of started the show to showcase these fantastic books that maybe get buried because they're not featuring Superman or Batman, or there's not like a DC or Marvel book. So many of these indie books like figure out how to spread out a story and how to introduce characters in fun and interesting ways that aren't being really explored much in the big two. That's what we like to showcase, is those new ways of storytelling, new creators who are taking those chances that maybe haven't had the opportunity to showcase those talents at bigger publishers. So, I mean, for me, that's what I look for, is something new and exciting. Maybe a talking dog would be nice, but it's not, it's not required. Andy, what about you?
I'm looking for a minimum 15 variants. I need ratios. I need
Foil variant must.
If it doesn't have a peach monaco cover, I don't want to read it.
I don't want to read it.
Does it even exist? No, the thing that always gets me excited about first issues, and I think everybody in the room will go, oh yeah, is you get to those last 2 pages and something buck wild happens, right? You turn the page and you're like, oh, that's what this book is. That's the stuff that gets me really, really jazzed about a story. And I think that is the mark of a good, not only book, but creative team, right? if you get to the end of the book and you're like, oh, I get it. You're not going to be, you might pick up issue 2 and issue 3, but if you get Void Rivals, right? You get to the end and you're like, oh, it's Transformers? I had no idea.
Yeah. After you put your eyes back into your skull, you go, my God.
Yeah, exactly.
I've done it.
That's exactly
And to all the publishers and editors of Marvel and DC in the crowd today,
What's up, Tom Breefort?
yeah,
How are you?
please fully embrace the double issue for first issues.
Yeah.
Allow those stories to breathe more and to get more, storytelling in, more time to get to know more characters. That is for us. Image Comics does a fantastic, easy way to do that. Like most of their first issues are double issues, and we, as conscious purchasers, really appreciate
Hog in the machine.
the double issue for the price.
Yeah.
for sure.
Chris and I'm going to toss you guys a question. And Aaron, I want you to lead this one because you've gone on record saying that, compared to Chris, you're the beginner, you've kind of, and I say that respectfully.
No. We don't have a conversation about comics without me mentioning that I am the most junior
That is true.
comic reader here.
If there was a drinking game involved, that you'd be dead in 30 minutes of any episode of the Oblivion Bar. But what would be your advice to someone that wants to get into comic books or is just kind of slowly dabbling and maybe needs help in terms of how do they go about picking, a comic book up from a shop? And in particular, maybe a first issue or something like that.
Well, Botter Milligan from Short Box Jack. I actually wish that Chris would have answered this first because I only say that because Chris honestly is kind of like my Sherpa.
Chris, jump in there. Save the
No. I got this.
Okay.
Let me build you up before you answer.
Yeah,
okay.
tell me when to talk.
But he is we had a really good experience. My wife and I, who's sitting in the crowd right now, we went to
Charlie.
a comic shop in St. Louis, and Chris took her into the comic shop, and I got to watch him do his comic book, local comic shop employee spiel about introducing her into what she might like, and it was mind-blowingly welcoming, and I love that, and that's one of the reasons that we've been friends for years, but he continues to impress me and solidify why he is like a comic genius / expert, and so I take most of my way of bringing people into comics and the way I discuss things from him and his kind of expertise. And the way that I look at it as far as comics is when I walk into a comic shop, I'm looking at the wall and I'm overwhelmed. I don't know where to start. I don't know what issue to start on. Teenage Mutant Turtles just did a road to 150 and I'm like, I love Turtles, but where do I start?
You got a source book. You got the
300 issues on G.I. Joe right now. It's like if you want to watch anime, it's like, oh, somebody suggests One Piece.
Start in the middle.
Go ahead.
It's like it's 1,000 episodes. Where do you begin? And so for me, it's like just find a book, find something that looks fun, that looks interesting. I'm gonna throw this out there. My first real foray into a full-blown story was an LGBTQ story called Alice in Leatherland, which blew my mind. I've never read a story like that, let alone an entire arc. And it was maybe like 7 issues, and it was so beautiful and well done that it just it really introduced me into what an off-brand kind of comics can be. It was by Black Mask, I think, is the brand, is the publisher. And then I went and I learned who Mirka Andolfo is, and I read Unnatural, which shout out to Muscle Mommy's there.
Shout out to Mirka in the crowd. Mirka, thanks for stopping.
Mirka, thanks so much.
Thank you, Mirka. And honestly, I've loved her work. It has introduced me into the off-brand, the Zawas, so many different stories that are out there that are not your big two, not your Batmans, not your super, your just all these different characters.
Too, yeah.
And I'm just like, find something that looks interesting, that looks fun, and just grab a couple issues. I mean, shout out to Omnibus, who's actually a sponsor of our show. On their
Digital
app,
Daddy.
on their app, you can it has a section that says great number ones to start with. So go to your comic shops, find the recommendations, find somebody who's recommended number ones, and just find something that looks fun. There's so many new things starting all the time beneath the trees. Where the teddy bears play, there's so many fun, good things that are starting. And you were mentioning these not big, publishers, and I'm starting comics at an amazing time. Indie publishers are coming out with some of the greatest stories, and I'm loving it. I'm so happy I'm here.
Chris, Aaron kind of built you up, so I'm very curious to hear this. Can you give us maybe a condensed version of your
15 minutes
intro to comic book spiel, out of curiosity?
Yeah, I mean, kind of similar to what Aaron was saying there. I think the way I always recommend folks to get into comics is to go to your LCS, find a character that you already like, and just pick up whatever the most recent issue of that is. So if you're really big into Batman, just pick up the most recent issue of Chip Zdarsky and Jorge Jimenez's book, and just start there, because they will catch you up. Like, you're not going to be lost. And if there are parts that you don't understand, you read 2 issues, you will more than likely know what's going on. So I don't ever recommend people pick up like The Dark Knight Returns or Watchmen as your first book. I know that's always the one that people who often don't read comics recommend. Those are great stories, and those are ones that I started off with. But I think you get more out of those stories as you sort of progress and get your feet wet in the medium. So, yeah, I mean, I would imagine that the best place to start is usually, like I said, find a character, or find some art. You know, if you like an anthropomorphic bear that's killing folks, then pick up Beneath the Tree Where Nobody Sees, and that'll be a great first issue for you.
That was the other side of it that I wanted to throw out there. Is one thing that you don't think about when you're getting introduced into a specific superhero is that they are not the first team to have created it or created a storyline for it. So if you just like an artist or like a writer, find the story arc and where they started, you know, or to get recommendations on what you like to read, and then how it kind of attributes to that creative team, because that will be a good place to start also, because it's a whole new storyline that they're starting off. You don't have to start at Batman 1. You can start at Batman 352, because that's when the Penguin iced somebody.
Yeah.
All right, well said. Thank you, gents. Let's give a round of applause to the First Issue Club Pull List Essentials.
You didn't even mention Antarctica, by the way, which is a great comic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, actually, on the topic, you guys have mentioned anthropomorphic bears a few times, which brings me to my Pull List Essentials. I'm going to keep this brief. First and foremost, my favorite ongoing comic book is a title called Local Man. It's being published by Image Comics. It's written by Tim Seeley. I think drawn by Tony Fleeks. I always get this.
They both, I think they write and draw together.
Good to know. So this particular ongoing series can be best described as a rural crime noir meets superhero kind of action. It centers around the main character, Jack Xavier, who in his younger days was the young buck and, superstar of this 90s kind of inspired superhero team called Third Gen. There's an incident that happens that kind of forces him to go back home to his small town and live with his mom and dad. And, he's kind of trying to find his place in the world now. He's got this incredible ability he's kind of got like a bullseye kind of power where he can always hit his target. So he's very accurate, I guess, if that's a superpower. But, he's coming from this high to this very low, back home, small town, finding his place. There's a lot of shady things going on. It kind of evolves into much more than that. It kind of goes into like a murder mystery that ties into his old roots, and he's, helping to uncover things, and really poignant read, especially if you're someone that's from like a small town that can, has just kind of dealt with, identity and, friends and outgrowing certain things. I'd highly recommend it. It's definitely my favorite ongoing series currently right now. Speaking about anthropomorphic bears, it brings me to my favorite miniseries, which is actually wrapping up on May 8th. It's a 6-issue miniseries called Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees. It's written and beautifully illustrated by Patrick Horvath. It's coming out through IDW Publishing. I've seen it described multiple ways, but the best way to put it for me is it's Dexter meets Bernstein Bears. So you've got this beautifully, drawn watercolor comic book. It centers around this, cuddly anthropomorphic bear named Samantha, who owns a hardware store. Wait, definitely not that cuddly. Yeah, don't get that close. Bears in general aren't that cuddly, I guess. But she owns this hardware store, and she lives in this like perfect suburban town with other anthropomorphic animals. There's a frog that has a bakery shop. I think the cat owns a meat shop. It's so cute. But there's a deep, dark secret, right? Samantha is a serial killer who likes to go into the big town and murder other animals and, hide their bodies. And she thinks that she's got it made, that no one's the wiser. But one day she starts seeing that, people in her town are being mysteriously and gruesomely murdered. So now she's got to solve this mystery. So there's a lot of, I think I love that meta factor to it. And then, juxtaposed with the artwork, you're like, what the fuck am I reading? Highly recommend it. It comes to an end, at least this first run. I don't know if it's being picked up, but I can't recommend it enough if you want something that completely subverts your expectations.
Also, shout out to Patrick Horvath for being here. Hey, Patrick, how are you? Thanks for being here
Patrick,
today. Thank you so much. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Big shout out to you, buddy.
Great hat. So tall.
Where'd you get that first issue club shirt?
All right, and then my favorite single issue is Transformers #7. I don't know about you guys. I grew up. I think I just barely missed the boat on the Transformers train. It was something that my dad played, did the old cartoons. I just never really got into it like that. And the movies, I don't know. I kind of missed the boat, but what Daniel Warren Johnson and Skybound has done with the Transformers line has been remarkable. And just as far as like being a good jumping on point, a reintroduction to the characters, providing a great story, a lot of action, great artwork. Issue 7 in particular is the start of a brand new storyline. They also brought in a new artist by the name of Jorge Corona, which, coming off the heels of Daniel Warren Johnson, I think sets the bar really high. I think a lot of comic...
Who's that? Daniel Warren Johnson? Heard of him.
Indie creator, small town name, you might know.
That's cool.
But issue 7 in particular was just, coming off the heels of issue 6, which was like this big, end to the first arc. You're kind of like, how do they top that? But issue 7 single-handedly just kept they kept their foot on the gas pedal. A lot of action, great artwork. I think Jorge Corona is a great, artist to jump on point. And it gives you a badass fight between Starscream and Soundwave. And sometimes that's all you want to see is two giant robots going at it, right?
Isn't that what Daniel Warren Johnson does so well, though?
I think that's what the Bible was about, to be honest.
Daniel Warren Johnson has this incredible ability to match just heartwarming, thoughtful, genuine stories with just badass, just brain candy.
There's only heavy metal.
Yeah.
That's how you describe Daniel Warren Johnson's art, heavy metal.
Yeah, 100%.
But he also manages to always find the heart in the story. It doesn't matter how badass the art is, how awesome the action is.
You a powerbomb?
He loves it when people die. He loves killing off.
Oh my God.
And making me feel something on the inside.
That he does. And I appreciate that he values the emotional aspect on top of like everything that you would love about comic books at face value. My honorable mention, talking about subverting expectations, I wanted to go a different route for honorable mention, but before I reveal that, gentlemen, is there anything, do you guys want to add any colorful commentary to any of the titles that I mentioned? Are you guys reading anything to add?
We had all three of the ones you have here, Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, Local Man, and Transformers on our best comics of 2023 list. So you nailed it on the head. These are all incredible comics. These are books that I would hand folks who either, again, as we said earlier, have never read comics or are longtime veterans in the medium. These are all great series.
If you need something to give you an entire universe to start off with, Void Rivals, which starts off the Energon universe, is a great way to start any kind of like whole world building. And the fact that it's all going to come together at some point is just like, I'm just like gripping the table and I'm waiting for it.
I think Beneath the Trees is the perfect example of why I read comics. It's like I go to this shop every week. I get my normal stuff. You get kind of in the rut for a little bit. And then this book comes out of nowhere.
Yes.
And you're just like, I was there for it. I was there the day it came out. I got to talk about it. This is my water cooler moment. I get to say I picked up the first issue of Beneath the Trees. And it fuels you for the next 6 months until something else comes out.
I just love the fact that I got to stand next to several people who are like, man, I didn't get to get the #1 because I didn't think it looked cool so I could make money off of it. Sorry, sucker.
Yeah, this is one of those rare moments in the medium where it's not only commercially, like in the aftermarket, successful, but it's also like critically. People like fans like us, anyone can love the story as well. Because a lot of times, I would say in today's world, we don't need to get on a tangent about this, but those often don't mix. Right? Like a lot of times
this is a podcast, so tangents welcome.
That's true, yeah. I mean, a lot of times when you get those like key issues that everyone wants and the market's hot, it's for first appearances or like a high variant or what have you. But sometimes, like in this moment with Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, it is because not only is it a great story, but also the aftermarket really wants it as well.
Yeah, it feels like everything, all cylinders are firing for sure. Andy, you were shaking your head pretty violently in agreement as I was talking about Transformers. You got anything to say about are you reading the Transformers series?
I am reading Transformers.
Defend yourself.
I love Transformers. I mean, Daniel Warren Johnson slaps. I will take the opportunity, though, to pivot and say that Local Man is a book that I will take every opportunity to talk about because it is so good. I'm a Tim Seeley shill, like these guys are for Tom King. Giving him the opportunity to team up with Tony Fleeks is incredible because Tim does crime so well. And on top of that, he does like cartoony violence really well. I'm a huge Hack Slash fan, his horror series. And that it takes all the best parts of that like violent action stuff from Hack Slash and the crime stuff that he does, like he did what is it, the Eddie Gein book with Harold Schechter. I don't know. If you're a crime fan, a noir fan, a superhero fan.
If you just moved in with your parents again.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you're a 90s comic.
If you own over 100 copies of Amazing Spider-Man from Todd McFarlane.
And I do.
I mean, literally, all of that stuff is all applicable to this book. If you have ever read a comic book, you will find something enjoyable about Local Man. Yeah. If anyone else wants to talk about Local Man after the podcast,
I'll be here for 30 minutes after the show.
I'm welcoming anyone to come, and we'll go yell at Tim about it too. And Tony's here too, right?
Yes,
I think
in the crowd and at the con.
Local Chicago.
There we go. All right.
Why isn't Dave
Enough suspense building. My last, but very not least, honorable mention. I would not be a responsible comic podcaster if I didn't use this platform to talk about the greatness that is X-Men 97. All right. I know it's not a comic book, but come on now.
We're eating good, X-Men fans.
All right. I know. I cheated. It's not a comic book, but considering that, this is, you can make an argument. This is based on the classic X-Men, 90s X-Men, comic book series. And just overall, I feel like this cartoon in general has been especially this, 97 in particular, has felt like a giant love letter to all things X-Men. Especially the comic books. It's been amazing to watch this current series and see them do an amalgam of so many different iconic and classic X-Men stories from, Inferno, Zero Tolerance, Life After Death. I think this has now set the bar for me. And Invincible has already kind of set that, but I feel like this has kind of pushed that bar a little higher up in terms of how an animated comic book show should be. Great writing, really good animation, great action, the gravitas, stakes are there, all of that. So X-Men 97. Can I get a round of applause for X-Men 97? Come on, guys.
And shout out to Comic Book Couples Counseling, Lisa Gullickson, for her vocal rendition of the X-Men theme song.
Yeah, if Brad and Lisa were here, I'm sure they'd get embarrassed by that. But yeah, their intro is all the X-Men animated series. But also, I love in the series, that's the only thing I want to point for the series is that when Storm is it the first or second episode, she goes, "I can't feel the breeze."
Look, they're letting
And here in Chicago, you can definitely feel the breeze.
You can feel the breeze. Yeah.
Well said. All right, let's get into our Champions Row. So this is the segment where we're going to talk about comic book creators, artists, writers, etc., that are just doing the damn thing, all right, that we want you guys to be familiar with, that we want to show some love to. Let's do a little lightning round on this one, considering our time. First, Issue Club. Tell us about these creators you want to spotlight.
Yeah, so Zach Thompson is one of our favorite writers who has written, as you can see, so many great books. Blow Away, Cemetery Kids Don't Die, Into the Unbean, I Birthed the Body. He's like a phenomenal horror, suspense, dramatic writer. He is leading up to becoming one of your most favorite writers here pretty soon. I undoubtedly think he'll be on a DC or Marvel book within the next, hopefully 2 to 5 years. Consistently fantastic writer. Can write a hell of a character that you can bond with and then immediately get rid of him. And then I'll pass it to Andy here real quick so we can talk about Iman. But, he just came out with Blow Away, which is a suspenseful story about, 2 hikers on a mountain that, meet their untimely death, and this photographer has to investigate it, and she's now being hunted by someone else. It's just a phenomenal story.
Yeah, we had a conversation on last issue or the 2
Last issue club.
Last episode, about how Zach is a writer who's going to have one of those breakout books. It's just a matter of which one is going to be the next Beneath the Trees, whatever.
Yeah.
I was just telling Greg that I just downloaded Blow Away on Omnibus because you guys talked about it last episode. So I'm excited. Good. So thank you for exposing me to them.
It's dope. And so we don't actually practice names. So if I mispronounce this, please forgive me. Eamon Winkle is the artist on Principles of Necromancy, and he's done some variants. But this guy, man, if you haven't read Principles of Necromancy, absolutely read it.
New publisher.
Yeah, new publisher, Magma Comics. But the art in here, I opened it and immediately I was like, this is something. This felt like...
It felt like the first time I saw Daniel Warren Johnson.
That's
and
exactly
the
right.
expressiveness of his line work. And it's just like something incredible is here. And if this gets to cook a little bit more, it's like sky's the limit.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, Daniel Warren Johnson's the absolute perfect comparison. It's truly, truly next level. And for it to be, I mean, I think this is his first interiors. Don't quote me on that. But for it to be his first interiors, it's wild. And on top of that, he's writing a great story by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. So
Well said. Good choices. Put those guys on your radar. Move on. Oh, I guess I'm next. All right, I'm going to keep mine short and brief. David Pepos is a crime reporter turned comic book writer. And I had the opportunity to interview him last week. So if you go on the Shortbox feed, it's the most recent episode. But he is one of the nicest guys I've ever met in comic books. Like, very soft-spoken, not soft-spoken. He's very humble, very kind, and brilliant. He comes from a journalistic background, so he's got that going for him. You know, the crime reporting aspect as well. So I think when it comes to portraying crime, action and drama, he's got that down tenfold. He has written Savage Avengers. He introduced new Punisher into the Marvel Universe, Joe Garrison. And just hearing his approach for just that, how he had tackled such a controversial and, difficult character to write about in today's lens in modern times. I could put a lot of respect on him for taking that, that character and that property and making it his own. His latest and newest stuff that he's doing is Space Ghost, which once again is a show that I grew up watching, because of my dad. He put on the cartoon. So I always just have him, in this compartment of, that's my dad's, heroes and cartoons. But leave it up to someone like David Pepos to, reinvigorate him, revitalize him, and bring him to modern times. Issue 1 actually comes out next Wednesday, or this Wednesday coming up. And I guarantee you it is the most badass version of Space Ghost you'll ever see. Like,
He's not just a late night show host.
No, not at all. But it does make you appreciate, who Space Ghost is and how he's been in pop culture. So David Pepos, if you see his name on any comic book, pick it up. Highly guarantee it. The artist I want to go ahead and highlight, who apparently is a man of mystery, because I could not find a single photo of this.
He doesn't have any photos. And if I can just interject really quickly, we had him and Ram on the show together for Dawn Runner. He explicitly said he would only do the interview if I didn't show his face. So he's very private about that.
You know what? I'll accept that, because his artwork is so damn
He
beautiful.
could be among us at this moment and we wouldn't know.
Evan, there he is, right there. He's right next to he's right next to Daniel Warren Johnson and Tom Brevoort.
Yeah, YouTube audience, you can't see YouTube.
The first ghost of Stan Lee over there?
Evan, I think it's Kagel.
Kegel.
Okay. Yeah. Evan Kagel, like I said, there isn't much to go off of social media, but this is a prime example if he just lets the work speak for itself. He is currently doing the interiors of Dawn Runner, which is a new series through Dark Horse. Ram V is writing it, who we've talked about earlier in this slide. His artwork is a blend between, I feel like, an MTV animated movie meets Akira. I mean, it's like so much. He's so technically gifted. He can draw giant robots. He can draw giant monsters. He draws very emotional and emotive people as well. I think he's doing the covers for this Dune comic book series, and every single one of those covers just captures the overall, emotions and what you think of when you think of like high sci-fi. So if you're into sci-fi, robots, kaijus, highly recommend anything by Evan Kagel. With that said, I'm going to take it to the Oblivion Bar. Oblivion Bar, tell us about your creator spotlights.
Yeah, so Aaron, I'm sorry I took both of these, so I'll talk about these guys. Number 1 is Tyler Crook. He's one of my favorite working, not only artists, but also writers as well. He recently just did The Lonesome Hunters over at Dark Horse, but you also may know him as the artist on Harrow County with Colin Bunn. It was an award-winning series. But Tyler, we had him on the show recently, and I couldn't help but be just smitten by his, genuine sort of humbleness, right? Like he doesn't understand how much of a unique voice he has in the medium, and it's pretty evident when you see his work. It's unlike anybody else's, and I'm just a huge fan of not only him but his work as well. And then Buster Moody, who I don't know if you guys are familiar with him. It reminds me of Iman a little bit. Why is he not everywhere?
He's a KC guy too.
He
He's
will
at
be.
Planet every year.
He will be
It's
soon.
insane. He is insanely talented, as you can see there from the right. He's done some creator-owned, Kickstarter and whatnot. But I see a lot of his commissions. I don't have a picture of it, and I probably should have included it. But I reached out to him on Twitter, maybe back in 2018, asked for a commission, $200, which is insane for anybody who's not familiar with commission rates. He gave me this huge Daft Punk commission that he not only sent me for $200.
Yeah.
This is easily a $2,000 commission for literally anybody else.
Yeah.
And then he also sent me the colored print that he's going to be selling at different cons and whatnot. Planet, I'm sure. So Buster is someone who I think you should definitely keep on your radar 100%. I think he's going to hop on either a cover or interior in the next couple years, and I think he'll be one of the most unique voices in the medium once he is.
I didn't choose either of these. As Chris said, he totally took over the slide. But the simple fact is Chris knows my taste. And the fact that Buster did a Guyver commission, I'm already sold. So
He also did he did a cover for
Nailed it.
TMNT 150, the last issue of Soapy Campbell's run. So I think that's he's done some covers, but that's the most recent cover that I can think of.
He did a Godzilla book.
Godzilla in Hell. He did an issue 3, and it's all silent. So
Nuts.
it's just his art.
I need to find that.
Solid stuff. All right. Well, C2E2, let me go and say this. I think we hit do we have 5 minutes left? Is that what you're saying?
2. 1?
10 minutes.
Oh, we got 10 minutes. Okay, so we can actually do Q&A.
Only 8 minutes left. So
8 minutes left. Thank you, Time Clock King Aaron. With that said, I'm kidding. Let's do Q&A and open that up really quick. If you have a
Please no pushing. Please no pushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, please stop. Ghost of Stanley, stop that. All right, please. Let Jack Kirby in front.
Yeah.
All right, if you guys, if anyone has a question, you can line up behind that mic and ask a question. And as that is going on, I'm going to go ahead and leave this slide up here where if you are curious about checking out anyone's shows, whether that be First Issue Club, Short Box, or Oblivion Bar, you can scan that QR code. We've also got some freebies, free stuff up here as well that we'll hand out as we're wrapping up.
Aaron took my bit.
Uh-oh. Okay, so we do got a question from an audience.
Sexy man in the middle. What you got there?
Yes, young man, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. So I'm kind of new to comic book writing. I don't know if you guys know this. I'm kind of new to comic book reading. I'm curious about your perspective on when you read a really good issue number 1,
Sure.
and then kind of down the road, obviously sales kind of dwindle with something that I've overheard from shopkeepers about sales kind of dwindling as the series goes on.
Uh-huh.
What are your feelings when you read a really good issue 1, but then come to find out that it's kind of just really dropped off at the end? And I'm going to throw one specific example, but you don't have to use this example as your answer. Vanish by Donny Cates.
Well, that's a difficult one because there's a lot of back history with why Vanish didn't continue.
Yeah, there's a very specific reason why Vanish is not continuing on.
Question.
I think the
Leave it
unique
to Aaron to
That's
pick
a
the most
very good
controversial-
question. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah.
Question asker.
I'm here the whole time.
I've actually asked a lot of creators, because as comic book marketing is an interesting thing because it doesn't exist. The creators are meant to kind of promote their own book, and sales, do kind of fall off, especially with indie books after the first issue. I would say that, as a comic book reader, to stay vigilant and dedicated, and just because, your favorite book isn't getting the attention that it should doesn't mean you should drop off. You could also just wait for the trade or collected editions to just get it all in one sitting. But, as comic book fans and a comic book podcast host, I'm just mentally broken to just continue with a broken wheel down the road. So it doesn't really matter to me if no one's talking about my favorite book. It's still my favorite book.
Yeah. And so on the flip side too, I talked about the last 2 pages, right, where you flip it and you get that feeling. Sometimes that feeling and that moment you have is just that. A creator has a great idea, but you can't stretch it out for 28 issues or 72 issues or whatever. And I'll say as a consumer, that's okay. You don't have to buy the entire run of a comic. You can buy 6 issues and enjoy them. You can buy 12 issues and enjoy them. But you have to have those moments in books that keep you coming back to keep you coming back, right? If issue 6 doesn't have a moment, I don't know, don't pick up issue 7. Is that a bad answer? Buy more comics, but, don't, I guess.
If I could caveat just briefly, I think there's really no wrong way, I think, to read comics. If you want to collect, I collect just mostly trades now. I used to be a big, single issue collector, but recently I just switched strictly to trades. And I think anyway, we're all looking at a way to try to help, keep this train rolling, this medium. I don't know who said this quote, but it was, comics have been the most popular and on the brink of destruction since they began. They're always the most popular and on the verge of bankruptcy at this exact moment, and it'll be worse in 5 minutes. So any way that you can support the industry, the medium, I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong way to do that.
Yeah. My only answer to this is that's
ask the question.
I love that you're answering your own question.
I've been here the entire time. I didn't ask the question, but I would just say that we got to think of, anybody in here who's created anything knows how hard it is to put your creation out there for the world to see. Mm-hmm. So when you as a creator put something out there and it doesn't really sell well or nobody's really talking about it, it can be very hard to deal with. So one thing that I tell people to do is if you really like something that you're reading, don't be afraid to shout out. Don't be afraid to talk about it online. Don't be afraid to tag the artist in, on whatever social media platform. Because if they know that you're enjoying it, even one person, that might mean the world to them. So don't be afraid to do that. And that's going to invigorate them to continue to create.
So, next question, please.
Next question.
Oh, yes. So I'm a big romance and rom-com fan. Mm-hmm. Are there comics for me?
Yes.
I have a couple suggestions.
Me too.
Yeah, I would say my favorite one to recommend is Blankets by Craig Thompson. That's an incredible romance comic that will literally kick you in your heart. It will reach into your stomach, but it's incredible. I would say a more recent one. I don't know if it's necessarily romance. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but Love Everlasting by
Just about to say
Tom King. Surprise, surprise. I have a Tom King recommendation. With Elsa Chartier is another great book that started off on was it Substack, and now it's through Image. So yeah.
One thing I talked about, Lolo Zanfardino's Alice in Leatherland is a great one that talks about kind of coming into your own sexuality, kind of introducing yourself into when you move to a new area and finding and discovering your whole new kind of love and romantic language in this new kind of undertaking. So I love that one. One thing Chris introduced me to was Saga. The romance between the two main characters is so interesting that even if you're new in a relationship versus being in a marriage for years, you can take something out of the relationship between the two main characters in the first real run of Saga.
Yeah. So to answer your question, yes, there's a ton of romance comic books out there. There's a ton of Western comic books.
Chef's Kiss. Also look up Chef's Kiss.
There's many genres out there. Unnatural, like Aaron mentioned earlier, is at its core a romance comic about finding
it is.
a new set of romance with outside and within yourself, because it is important to love yourself before you try to love someone else. But great question. You were very handsome. What's your name again?
And if you have a podcast,
you have a podcast you want to pimp?
Yeah, you got a good podcast voice. You consider it. All right, C2E2. With that being said, I want to thank you guys so much for attending our live podcast crossover show panel. That's a mouthful. But let's give it up for our panelists: Andy Vargas, Greg Lichtai, Chris Hacker, Aaron Knowles. Woo! Most importantly, let's give it up for yourselves. Thank you guys so much for attending.
Big round of applause for Botter. He put all this together. He organized it.
Thank you.
One of the longest running podcasts going about comic books. Give it up.
He's also really tall.
I do this for you, Mom. All right, you guys, like I said, we got some freebies up here if you guys want to come up to the table, grab some freebies. Besides that, you guys have a great rest of your day and enjoy the convention, right?
Yeah. Go support some creators.